Hello, welcome to 30 Minutes. I'm Rick Anthony. Today's a very special day for me because my guest is someone who is not a stranger to Radio Studio 21, but we haven't done a show for some time. Here we are in the first quarter of this year, the end of the first quarter of this year. And I don't think you've been here this year. If you were, it wasn't a very memorable experience.
This is the first time this year.
First time this year.
Yes.
Dr. Hilliard Pouncy, who is an author, a speaker, and a socio-political researcher, who's involved in several projects, all of which are intended to provide some information to add to the quality of life, particularly people who are disadvantaged. I think that's fair to say from what I know of your work.
I am one of the good guys.
You are one of the good guys. I always enjoy our visits because, as I've said so often in the past, we seldom agree on anything, but
we have a contract in writing, I think.
But that's what good friendship is all about. We can beat one another up and then shake hands afterwards.
It's too bad it's not a norm in the society, isn't it?
It is. I agree with you.
Okay.
I agree with you. But they just aren't as good as we are. That's it. Today's subject, which Dr. Pouncy has selected, has to do with smartphones, technology specifically, all kinds of technology that is having a direct, in my opinion, having a direct impact on our society, the way we think, the way we behave, the way we vote, what we buy, how we use it, and the people with whom we want to associate. I think it's, in my opinion, it's having a negative impact on an entire generation, and I am fearful of what the next generation is going to be like, because similar to the generation before, they were all born with chips in their heads, and they can do fantastic things before they can walk. And I've got great-grandchildren now who are the proof of my position. You read an article, and that's always dangerous. You read an article about, and I think I can tell you the title of it is "If Stalin Had a Smartphone." I love the title, and I enjoyed reading the article. You want to try to summarize the author's position, and then we can discuss whether or not you agree with it and why not.
Yeah, when we were thinking about doing another in a long series of shows, I was reading this column in the New York Times by David Brooks, who's an odd duck, I would argue. He wears the label conservative, but he's one of the smartest people that I...
Wait a minute. They are antithetical?
No, I use the word "and." He's conservative and he is smart. You can be conservative or liberal and not smart. So I was just noting that that the issue here is that if you only look at his label, conservative, then you're harming yourself, because independent of his label, he's a very keen observer, and that's not just because I agree with him. In fact, in this case, I don't, but because he's very good at taking something important to us and really giving us an angle on it that lets us rethink what we may have already been believing, that kind of thing. And this one, in this article, he says, well, let's think about the smartphone, which is just a symbol for what my thesis advisor used to call technologies of freedom. But the argument was forever, let's argue, do new technologies, especially new communication technologies, harm or benefit? When Gutenberg revolutionized the way we print, was that the devil's work or God's work, for example? And at each moment we get a change in the way we communicate at a mass level. This argument resurfaces. Is this good or is it bad? And the smartphone is just a return to an old theme, and Brooks captures it really neatly by saying, the smartphone, why if Joe Stalin had those things, he would have run Russia even more effectively, because, and then I think there's a litany of things this new technology's been doing that's all bad, and you summarized that, I think, pretty well. But just to rehearse it, the smartphones let Big Brother track you, know what you're doing, know your information. These smartphones are distractions, like a circus, because they let people, instead of paying attention, play games and stuff, and they're just creating this passivity in the public. And dictators love a passive public and total information. And then, of course, they allow big government to manipulate us. And that's the one that really caught my attention, because the rest of it is, maybe it's good for a lot of people to play games, stay out of bars. But what the real problem with is, can these things allow large groups, large companies, major political actors to manipulate mass publics? That's the big one. And he's arguing that it's true. Now, I happen to know from personal experience what he's talking about. The story goes like this, and the short version is, as an adult and a parent, I'm allowed to embarrass my kid. I only have one, and that's my job. And I'm on your show, and it's 5. How many? You have 10, 5? Do you know your size of your audience at this point?
Let's not go there.
Well, okay, just because
there are 3 of your friends. You've told me that.
At least 3.
At least 3.
Could be 10.
And people stop you. You're telling me.
They do stop me.
And people see you on LinkedIn.
Yes,
and they see
that's right. Yeah, it's amazing.
We have made you a persona.
The amazing,
persona.
an example of the problem with the new technology.
Yes.
Your show is destroying the minds of many people.
and you're contributing to it.
I'm helping out as best I can. And in this particular case, I'm doing it.
I lost the thread already.
No, I fortunately I remember. The thread was that I'm here to embarrass my son, and use a personal anecdote to talk about what Brooks was trying to tell us. So for a while, my son worked for some startup company in California, and their business model was to pitch things to people on Facebook. And the problem, as you know, for advertisers is, why would I buy something from a perfect stranger? Most of us at some point either have a friend or somebody we know and trust tell us that this is a good idea or a good thing, etc. And it's a famous theory of communication. It was called the 2-step theory of communication, that most of us don't really pay attention to advertising. What we pay attention to is what are called opinion leaders, friends in our circle of friends that we think know something about stuff. And so advertising is really aimed at opinion leaders, not the average Joe. So if you could find a way to replace an opinion leader, get people to do what you want without them filtering through an opinion leader, then that's a game changer, as they say. So these characters that my son was hanging out with were trying to change the game. And what they figured out is that on Facebook, nobody knows you're a dog. So what they were able to do is they were able to say to would-be opinion leaders, look, we will give you a cruise on the Disney cruise ship if you will tell 10 of your friends to buy something as because you like it. So they had figured out the 2-step thing, and they were hijacking it by bribing the opinion leaders, which is these people are supposed to be trusted, and yet they were corrupting them. And then they found that once you got the opinion leaders' friends to do whatever the opinion leader, the corrupt opinion leader, told them, then they could substitute for the opinion leader a friend of the opinion leader. Mm-hmm. Do you see where this is going?
Yes.
Exactly. And it ends with what? Because they figured out how to destroy the 2-step communication process, what was the consequence?
I have no idea.
I was hoping you would pass the exam this time.
I'm sorry.
The consequence was the 2016 election.
Ah.
You're
Yes.
still not making. Yeah, the idea was that it's part of that presidential election,
which was preceded by the first Obama election, where he spent and his team spent more money on social media than anyone before.
Right. Yeah, but here's
since.
Yeah, but here's the thing.
Because of that very theory.
No, they got it. That's why I'm here today, to help you. Okay? Here's the thing. So the 2-step communication theories is what the Obama campaign used. But the brilliance of the 2016 election was they destroyed that model. It was brilliant in its own way, and that's where Brooks is talking about. The Obama model says if we can figure out who the real opinion leaders are and bombard them and get them right, we'll win. Because the normal way that mass campaign operators have been functioning until
It was even more sophisticated than that because they went down the grassroots, real grassroots.
That's right. That's right. But they
did
one
a
example.
masterful job.
I'll give you an example. So our family name is not that common, okay? And up until at one point, some members of my family are registered Republicans, other members of my family are registered Democrats. For a long time, the two parties couldn't figure it out because these people have the same name. But the Obama people were able to do things like that. They were very granular, and they knew that one of the people in my family was a Republican and one of them wasn't. And they could get it right, whereas the other party couldn't. So that's how they had certain kinds of advantages. But if you don't mind, I'd like to kind of get an argument on the table, and then we can pull it apart.
That's
okay?
fine.
So the big thing that happened going into the 2016 election is that people like my son had figured out how to substitute the influence of a human opinion leader by first training people to listen to an opinion leader who had been corrupted, and then saying, but here's a friend of your opinion leader, and he says yada yada as well. So once you can use avatars or substitutes for real people to be effective in promoting beliefs, opinions, attitudes in a non-face-to-face arena like Facebook, then you do have a game changer. And that's what foreign actors were able to move in on, because now you can destroy the big theory for almost a century that only people will only listen to trusted other individuals to make decisions. Once you can get rid of that dyad, then you have a new arena. And that's what Brooks is talking about. He's saying because of these things, and the smartphone is just a symbol, we now have this new world that would allow, well, in this case, Joe Stalin, but any actor, a major company, the thing you were talking about to introduce your show, or for good or bad, to operate in a way we haven't seen before. And that's what Brooks is able to do, David Brooks is able to do in this article, to get us to see something that is all about behind the scenes manipulations and stuff, to say, look, all you need to know is that if Joe Stalin had had one of these things, he would have been even more successful. Now that gets your attention, and that's what we're here to talk about. And I'm here to suggest that David Brooks is wrong, even though right in front of us, something that seems to prove that he's right has happened. And you've got some material that you got online and looked at, and to say, yeah, not only is he right, he's more right than he knows. So let us begin.
Well, as usual, there's so many different facets of this issue, and you've chosen one. But I don't think you're denying, maybe denying is too strong a word. I don't think you're taking issue with the data that we all have now available to us, that the technology is eroding, in my opinion, and the opinion of a number of others, is eroding the intelligence of a whole generation, their ability to think, because they're not permitted to think anymore. They're being told what to think and how to act, going back to your point, not only by these avatars you mentioned and the people who are representing causes and ideas, etc., but by the technology itself, artificial intelligence, all of the other things we are as a generation now beginning to depend upon out of necessity. Let me give you one example. I am currently involved with a company that is focused on caregiving. Well, there's caregiving.
Caregiving, okay.
There's a looming caregiving crisis in this country and other countries as well. Just aren't enough people who are willing, available, et cetera, to take care of the aging population.
Right.
Well, the solution, some would argue, is technology. There are people, as you know, building robots who will take care of older adults in their homes and other institutions. That's not a solution, but they're grasping for anything because we don't have anything better right now. We don't have enough human beings. I saw when we had our 15 grandkids growing up, and I've mentioned this to you before, and we talk about it, other grandparents, when we get together. I saw them come to the house, and they would go to their respective corners with their little devices, and they were there for hours.
Yeah. Social
They
isolation.
weren't socializing.
Social
they weren't
isolation.
talking to one another.
Right.
They weren't learning anything.
Right.
They weren't showing respect for their elders. All the things that I grew up with and you grew up with that were really valuable to us in terms of our culture and perpetuating values, mores, etc. They didn't have any of that. The substitute was this device that became part of their unit. No, they became part of it, not. Now I see with our great-grandchildren exactly the same thing happening. They are super smart, very sophisticated, quick to learn. But I'm waiting to see as they grow older and mature what kind of people they're going to become, what kind of citizens they're going to become. Are they going to be critical thinkers, or are they going to rely on whoever's talking to me on this thing at the particular time on a particular subject? That's my concern, and I don't think that's what you're taking issue with, or are you? That is actually happening.
No. I first of all, I'm stunned into silence. I actually agree with you.
Well, if you agree, and I think we also agree, there's nothing inherently good or bad about that device.
I think that's probably right.
Yeah, there's nothing inherently good or bad about technology. It's the use, the application of the technology, and the purpose to which it's put.
Let's assume that that's right. Yeah.
Well, why wouldn't it be right?
No, because there actually could be problems.
Not inherent with the technology.
No, I actually am not sure about that part of it.
No. There can't be anything inherently wrong with the technology. It becomes good or bad. A value judgment is made depending upon how it's used and by whom and to what purpose.
Yeah, let's make it simple. Yes, let's agree to that.
Okay. So none of us is saying technology is bad. Technology is good for society. It's the only way we advance.
I'm not going to go with you on that. I think the.
But civilization has depended upon our advancing technology, from how to make a fire to creating robots that now do work that human beings don't want to do or can't do.
Yeah. So let's put a little boundary around things.
Okay.
So I'm pretty. First of all, we've got there's meat on the table. There's some serious questions on the table.
I read this and I agreed.
Yeah.
1,000%.
And I actually agreed with what you had been saying until you decided to go maximal about technology, good, bad, in some unqualified way. And so rather than take me into the deep end of a pool that I'm not sure I know how to deal with, let's just stick with what makes me comfortable.
Okay.
And that was this question about these technologies of our time certainly produce social isolation. You gave a really good example, and I think anybody that you and I talked to could match story for story, being in the room where everybody's in a corner with their little equipment.
And adults as well.
Right. And Brooks notes that. He says,
yes,
passivity produced by these kinds of technologies are good for centralizing authorities. Nobody's watching while the bad guys are doing bad things.
Specifically, he says, as online life expands, neighborhood life and social trust decline. You agree with that?
No, well, the two things are true, but they're not necessarily connected.
Okay.
Just to give an example, so just to take one word, social trust declines, right? That's a big thing. There's an industry on that point alone. And social trust has been declining since the end of World War II, long before we got these things. So that's an example of why he's good at giving us a picture, but wrong at getting the details right.
Can I just ask a question?
Sure.
I'm taking you.
Right.
To what extent has the proliferation of rapid communication, long before that, but newspapers, radio, television, and so on, to what extent has that contributed to the erosion of the decline of, only because of speed?
No, I get it.
People get information and they don't have time to process, to think about it.
Okay, let's hit the reset button.
Go ahead.
So modern telephone, radio, TV, all present in most of the 20th century. And yet for most of the 20th century, social trust, to the extent we can measure it, we weren't having any trouble with it. In fact, we were able, as a nation, to win, in effect, 2 major world wars and produce, transform our society into one of the first successful mass democracies, mass industries that lifted up its middle class and reduced inequalities. We were fantastic for most of the 20th century. The decline in social trust starts shortly in the 1950s. So you've had high-speed technologies for a long time, but you don't have the decline in social trust until a more recent time. And so Putnam, a guy named Robert Putnam, is the real first-class student of this thing. And he said, well, it could be TV, but you know, you didn't have decline right when TV starts. Sure, TV becomes ubiquitous, but there are other things going on. For example, the society becomes more integrated, the society becomes younger, there are lots of other demographic factors.
More affluent, more sophisticated.
Lots of things seem to be going into that cocktail. So social trust is possibly not technologically or if anything amplified by technology, but something else fundamental is going on in our society that may be eroding social trust. And it's merely in a correlation, I think is the word, but not a causation, that we have these technologies, but an erosion in social trust.
Technology has been an enabling factor with everything we've talked about. Change would not have occurred as quickly, as rapidly, and explosively in some cases, were it not for technology.
That's not correct. No, I want to keep it simple, because there's something seriously robust going on here, and this is it's my good fortune to be having this conversation with you. So again, the trick to the conversation is that the reason we didn't think we had to worry about technologies was because there was pretty good evidence that the society was based on human-to-human contact. Most people talk to other people, and opinion leaders were the only ones you had to deal with. So if you watch commercials carefully, they're going for the guy in the group who tells the others what beer to drink or what car to drive. And it's usually a different person in each group worrying about the particular thing. And then there'll be a character in the group who's got the angle on politics. So you just need to talk to that guy or woman to get the group to do politics. The real problem, potentially, has been that something about the combination of these mobile devices and the distribution of information through digital avenues may have destroyed that bedrock of the connection between information and people. That's the key. The rest of it, we've always had changes in technologies, changes in society, and it's not been having this effect. In other words, we thought during World War II, for example, when this study of persuasion propaganda really took off, that if we just bombarded the Germans or the target country with messages, we could change their minds. And it turns out, what changes minds is what your friends and neighbors.
Nothing that preceded this, and everything that we live with now, was a substitute for human connectivity.
That's the idea, yes.
Was not a substitute.
That's the
This is now a substitute for human connectivity.
Potentially.
It is. It's not potentially. It is.
That's why I'm here.
No, seriously. Talk to recruiters.
Yeah.
Talk to CEOs of companies who are trying to hire people. Talk to people who rely on other human beings. And they're telling you, I can't find anybody. Because they're tied to their damn machines. They're tied to their damn technology.
Yes.
They can't think.
Right.
They have no patience. They're not motivated. And I'm not just talking about the current generation. That is characterized as lazy, et cetera, et cetera. It's an entire wave that's gone over this country and other societies, taken over by technology. And we could go into so many different directions on this. I'm sure you heard this week the report that Google, because of the work it's doing for and in China, is aiding the Chinese military. There's another question, another show here someplace. Should we allow that? Should we allow an oligarch like that to exist and to expand? Or Amazon, what it's doing to this country and to other societies out of greed? Should we allow that to happen? And we see the consequences in this society and our economy and how fragile the world is right now, because it's in the hands of a relatively few powerful people who have all the money they need to influence the way and intimidate the way other people Oh, well, don't get me on my bandbox.
But you've restated Brooks's premise really,
Yes.
really well. But there's a flaw.
All right.
Okay, so for example, one flaw would be, is there anything we can do about it? Well, if this problem is so pervasive, then you shouldn't be able to do anything about it. But the mere question suggests that, well, maybe there isn't this inevitability. Maybe there is a way to deal with it, and that's an example of what my point would be. That to even imagine that there could be something we could do about it means that the theory is wrong. That there is a way to circumvent, or to call it talking back or fighting back, or maybe there's the appearance and then there's a difference in appearance and reality. Now I'm going to make this personal, just to make it clear, which is what good journalists sometimes can do. Okay, so a couple of months ago, because we haven't seen each other in a while.
No, it's been a while.
It's been a while. There have been
I miss you.
I dearly miss you. There have been some bad storms since we last talked.
Yes.
Right. What did you do the last time we had a storm, and it was a question of how you were going to get food? Just basic stuff.
You mean anticipating the storm?
No, well,
what did I do to prepare for it?
You do it your way, I'll do it mine. But for me, it was while the storm, in the aftermath of the storm, when the power was out.
Oh.
But you could, but through batteries, you could get online, for example.
Yes.
So what did you do to do basic needs when the power was out?
I didn't have to. We have a generator.
No, but that's okay. That's okay.
No, wait a minute. I'm sorry. We've run out of time.
You're kidding me.
No.
Are you a...
No, the man behind the camera says we've run out of time.
Wow, that's
so we'll have to leave them hanging on that.
That's a great tease.
We'll have to
I guess
leave
you
them.
might even get 20 people up for your next show.
We may have to do another show.
That
right
is
after
amazing. That's
it's
really
wonderful to have you with us.
I'm sorry
My
about
guest
that.
today has been Dr. Hilliard Pouncy, as you can see,
oh,
a
boy.
good friend whose opinions I always respect, but don't always agree with. Until next time, this is 30 Minutes. I'm Rick Anthony. Take very good care of yourselves.